I was home alone for the week, as my family had gone on vacation while I had to stay and work. It was around 2 a.m., and I'd stayed up to watch a scary movie in the dark in my basement. I was intent on really scaring myself, and seeing how far into terror I could really go, while still knowing I was safe in my own home. It was then that I heard pounding footsteps on the first floor. This was a common annoying occurrence when my family was home. Every time they passed through the front hallway past the basement door, I heard their footsteps. This time, fear immediately shot through me at the sound. My reflex was to turn the television off immediately. The basement door was up a flight of stairs and around a corner, so whoever it was would not have seen any light. I heard the basement door handle click and turn as I sat in absolute darkness. I moved slowly to be absolutely silent and crawled behind our large television. As I passed by inch, I noted with panic that its black screen still dimly glowed. I heard footsteps coming down from the carpeted but creaky stairs. I froze in my hiding place, listening. For many long minutes, I heard nothing. Had the intruder seen the television's afterglow, or had it faded in time? Was he standing in the pitch black, listening for me? I seemed to lie there in total silence for an interminably long time. My panic began to fade, and I began to think more clearly. Had I really heard an intruder? Could someone possibly be standing there in silence for so long without making any noise? The basement was so exceedingly quiet that the silence itself began to hurt my ears. Could the unknown person really avoid any noise from shuffling or breathing or anything else? If there was an intruder, he was still in the basement. Because the creaky stairs were incredibly loud, the door handle clicked, and he wouldn't know to mask his footsteps on the first floor so that they couldn't be heard from down here. I began counting in my head, trying to pass the time. As drool fell from my mouth onto the carpet, I didn't dare risk the sound of swallowing. I reached 60 seconds once, twice, 30 times, 60 times. By now my fear had faded, and I was more confused than anything. I estimated I had been crouched in the absolute black for almost 2 hours, and had still heard nothing. If there was an intruder, none of this made sense. Finally, I decided I'd have to make a move. If I did nothing, eventually the sun would come up and shine in through the small basement windows. And worse, I began to smell something horrible and cloying. Slowly, ever slowly, I began inching my way towards the stairs by the way of the walls. If someone was standing there in the dark, I should be able to go around them and then make a break up the stairs. Meanwhile, the horrible odor grew stronger. Had something died down here in the night? No living person would smell like that. Terrible images of some sort of corpse monster listening for me in the dark erupted in my thoughts, and I moved as fast as I could without making sound. Just as I finally approached the stairs, there was an enormous clatter, similar to something large falling or collapsing on the floor. It was at that moment I leapt forward and crashed up the stairs, running out through the open basement door and my wide open front door. Now certain that someone was in my house, I called the police from my cell phone and watched my house from afar. The police came, checked inside the house, and then grimly came back out to question me. They'd found a body in my house, my elderly neighbor, who seemed to have died of a heart attack. Their belief was that I must have left the front door unlocked, and he must have wandered in my house while dying, looking for help. At first, I felt horrible, thinking that I had sat there in the dark while the old man literally died a few feet away. Then it occurred to me, what the hell was the loud noise of things falling? That last prompted me to bolt up the stairs and out of the house. I asked the police, and they confirmed. The back door of my house had been left open as well, near a single bare footprint in the mud. Somehow, for some reason I'll never know, there was someone else in that basement with us, silent, waiting, and listening in the dark over the fresh corpse of an old man. Short introduction. This is my first time posting in this subreddit. I have read some extremely scary things here, and I wanted to share a story of my own. I have created a throwaway account, just because I have a fair amount of information on my regular account through comments and such. Anyhow, this all happened over the past week. A week ago tonight, I was in my basement attempting to dig out an old VCR so that I could show my daughter some family videos. My mother passed away a little over a year before she was born in a car accident, and I wanted to show her a video of my grandmother's last birthday celebration. After a lot of digging around, I found the VCR. Anyhow, I carried it upstairs, along with a box of old videos. There was a tape in the VCR simply marked 2, which I took out in order to watch the original video, which I wanted to show my daughter. After watching the video of my mother, my daughter and my wife went to sleep, but I continued looking through the old tapes and reminiscing about the great times I've had over the years. All the other tapes were marked pretty specifically. Mom's 50th birthday, 4th of July, 1998, New Year 2000, etc. I was curious as to what 2 was, so I popped it in and watched it. Right when I put it in, my jaw dropped. It was a sex tape of me and my wife that was recorded within the last few months. I know this because I got a tattoo on my arm about 8 months ago, and it was clearly visible in the tape. The thing is, I have never in my life recorded a sex tape. I turned it off. I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. After thinking it through, I turned it back on and noticed it was filmed from the corner of our room. I quietly crept into my room where my wife was sleeping and walked to the corner where it was filmed. Barely even visible. There was a hole right in the corner next to the ceiling, meaning it had to have been filmed from the attic. We never used the attic. I was only in there maybe once or twice shortly after we bought the house. It was a mess up there and needed some cleaning. Our ceiling was leaking as well, and I had to fix it from the attic. I walked over to my dresser, palms sweating, and took out my revolver, as would any good American, and grabbed a flashlight as well. The entrance was from the garage, so I went out, opened the small wooden hatch, and pulled the ladder down. My heart was beating so fast, sweat was pouring down my face. I had no idea who would be up there. I figured I had to get it over with, so I ran up as fast as I could, and I shined my light directly in the corner. No one was there. What I did find was still frightening. There was a small TV setup, recording equipment, stacks of Playboy and Maxim magazines, a lawn chair, and a wire fed down to the corner right above my room. Taped to the wire was a note that simply read, "I'm still watching." Needless to say, I freaked the fuck out. I jumped down the ladder, woke up my wife and daughter, and said we have to leave. We went to my brother's house and I called the police. They searched the house in the attic. They told me no fingerprints were found, and everything was clean. But underneath the insulation, they found more tapes, a lock of my wife's hair, and various love notes written to her. The police have no leads to who was in our attic, but they advise us to stay clear of the house until the investigation gets further. I'm currently still living with my brother, and my wife took off work so she doesn't have to go out, as she's absolutely hysterical about the ordeal. At this point, I have no idea what to do, but I will keep you guys posted on what happens with the investigation. I've never been a religious person. The few times I've gone to church, it was with my grandma, and they mostly just became a bonding experience for us, because I know she likes it when I show interest in her hobbies and beliefs. With that being said, I will be damned if I didn't start trying to pray to something that night. As a teenage girl, there are a few things you really grow to appreciate after a while. Car privileges, and getting to be home alone on the weekends. This story happened while I was at home alone one Friday night in December. Lights off, popcorn, scary movies, and ice cream. It was my literal definition of relaxation, and my parents were both out for the night. I was sitting on the couch watching my movie with my 2 cats when I started hearing things. It was either raining or snowing that night because I heard the distinct sound of water or something hitting the roof. This was fine by me. In fact, I like rain. I found it relaxing. So I laid back and continued watching my movie. I started smelling something odd not too long after that, and ended up getting up and spraying some air freshener. But I still felt lightheaded and couldn't place where the smell was coming from. I even checked the oven and the fireplace in case the gas pilots were on, but they were fine. So I laid down on the couch and tried to soothe my headache with water and aspirin. It was only after a few minutes that I started hearing the thumping coming from the back bedrooms. I shot up from where I had laid down, my head swimming. I paused the movie, listening. Both of my cats were laying on me, given they were even somewhat alert too now, awakened heads looking where I was, the hallway. The hallway started right by the basement stairs and came off right from the living room, leading down to the bedrooms and bathrooms in the rest of the house. So from where I was sitting, I could see the basement stairs, the hallway opening, and the entire front room. This includes the kitchen, the giant glass doors to the back porch, the door to the garage, and the front door. Our main room is very open. After I heard the thumping, I got extremely paranoid and grabbed my phone. I even grabbed my car keys and put my shoes on. That's what I get for watching scary movies alone, though. I was way too paranoid. I turned on pretty much every light in the house and went back to my parents' bedroom first to look around. That's when things started to get weird. In my house, we have 2 entrances into the attic, and neither of the entrance holes have an easy way to get to them because my dad was too lazy to add ladders to them. In retrospect, I'm thankful for that. The first thing I checked in my parents' room was their closet. It was a broken door that locked if you shut the door behind you while you were inside. I grabbed the little key off the door frame and opened the door, so if it accidentally shut behind me, I could get out. The other thing about the closet was that it had the entrance to the attic in the ceiling. When I looked up at the crawl hole, the square of plaster that acted as the cover was halfway off, and pieces of the dried plaster were on the ground. Someone had moved it and broken off the pieces in the process. I must have stared for a good 30 seconds before I walked out the closet slowly. I also made sure that I closed it tightly and started making my way back to the kitchen. I stopped and listened. At this point, I could hear the thumping noise in the attic loud and clear because my movie was paused. And I don't think I have ever walked and breathed so quietly in my life. I felt my head swimming still, and I heard the thumping above the living room going towards the garage. That's where the other attic opening was. So I quickly tiptoed to the garage door and locked the handle and the deadbolt from the inside. I felt like I was going to vomit at this point. I foggily decided I wouldn't call anyone from the inside of the house in case the person heard me, so I was quietly praying to anything that whoever the person was couldn't get into the main part of the house until I left. I took a few seconds to gather everything, and I thought I even heard the basement stairs creaking. I was beyond freaked out. I didn't waste any time and grabbed my 2 cats and threw on a coat, pretty much stumbling myself outside into the cold. Once outside, I instantly felt my headache lift, and I heaved in the cold air as it burned my lungs. Feeling my grogginess fade, I put my 2 cats in my car and pulled it slightly down to the street to my neighbor's house. I remembered to put the heat on for my little fur babies since it was 3 degrees outside that night. Luckily, it wasn't raining or snowing. I sat with my neighbor and I called my parents and the cops, who both showed up at about the same time. My mom sat with me across the street while the cops searched the house from top to bottom. It was about 15 minutes later that they told us that there was no one in the house anymore. The door leading to the backyard from the garage was wide open, and the attic access panel in the garage was open. They had apparently found foot and handprints all over the attic, as if someone or something had been on all fours crawling through the attic. And as if it couldn't get any worse, the entire attic had been doused in gasoline. The rain I had thought I had heard earlier that night. It was in fact not rain, but someone pouring a watering can full of gasoline onto the attic floor. From what the police said, they practically almost killed themselves trying to light our house on fire. They apparently hadn't accounted for not having any ventilation from the fumes and started stumbling and crawling when they couldn't walk straight anymore. I felt a little better knowing they got their instant karma. Apparently. It even looked like they fell to 10 feet from the ceiling opening to the concrete floor in the garage because there was a tiny bit of blood on the ground and on the back door handle. Weirdly enough, I felt even better after hearing that he got hurt. The police had me give a statement, and they were talking to us about how the cleanup was going to go for our house when another officer came over. He asked if I had been in my basement at all. I said no. He said that the door that was under the stairs was open, and that there was a gasoline canteen down there as well, but there was no one there. I was pretty much stunned. He didn't say it, but there was 2 people in my house that night. One in the basement that I walked right past at least twice, and one in the attic. I don't know how the second one got out. They didn't say, or they just didn't know, but there were 2 people in my house. I had heard those basement stairs creaking as I left. They were probably so close, and thankfully, I never even took a moment to look back. We stayed at my grandma's for a while. After that while, the gasoline was being cleaned and locks were put on our attic hatches, but nothing was really the same after that. I don't like being home alone anymore, especially not at night. And even after a long time, I don't think I will ever go in the attic again.